Trek movies aren't about a heavy. This one happened to work. Great. It saved the franchise, of course. It led to the next 2 movies. Wonderful. But the next 2 movies didn't have heavies in them either. Well, Star Trek 3, you could argue, had Christopher Lloyd as the heavy. It wasn't the heavy, it was just the heavy in the way. Okay, I'm going to put that in a little box over the table here, but not heavies like Khan. And when you see this replicated again and again and again in every Trek movie, well, maybe not, but the next gen movies. So we had the heavy, and let's go through them. We're going to go through them. This is my lecture on heavies in Star Trek movies and why they don't work. I'm just going to go with it. Heavies in Star Trek 3, Christopher Lloyd. Was that like a Khan heavy? No, it was a heavy. It was kind of in the way of the mission that needed to be done. So this was a heavy used to get in the way of the plot of the movie. So that's the secondary character nonetheless. The whole goal was to get Spock off Genesis. This was an obstacle. So Christopher Lloyd is an obstacle in that movie. He's not the heavy. All right. Star Trek 5 is... Oh, no, Star Trek 4. No heavies. Whales. Whales and big alien probes. So it's just like Star Trek 1. Not a big heavy there. No one's out for revenge. That's not Trek. Trek is about understanding, discovery, and all that stuff. I'm not going to deny it isn't Trek. Stay with me. Where am I at? Star Trek 5. Okay, is Sybok... I didn't think I'd be talking about Star Trek 5 again. Is Sybok a real heavy? I'm going to say no. Sybok's someone on a quest and takes advantage of others to get what he needs, but I wouldn't call him a villain. I wouldn't call him a heavy. So Star Trek 5, no heavy. Weird Klingon guy, that's the someone in the way again. Klingons don't make the heavies. They make the obstacles to the story. Star Trek 6. It's a tough one. Is anyone out for revenge? Is there a villain in the movie? I am going to argue on the spot, no. Even Admiral Cartwright and everybody else in the conspiracies to do whatever, and they did some bad things, right? They had a reasoning behind it that wasn't we're out for revenge. The moral ambiguities are questionable, obviously. That's where the conflict comes in. But we don't have a single heavy in that movie either. Even Christopher Plummer is Klingon general in league with others. So there's not a single heavy in this movie. They're doing what they're doing because they feel threatened about what could happen if there is a peace. Okay? Very nice. Sorry, my hand got in the way. Nice Cold War analogy, all that fun stuff. I wouldn't call that a Khan-like heavy. As cool as the Christopher Plummer Klingon is in that movie. All right. Generations. This is my lecture on Star Trek movies and the issues. We have Clockwork Orange guy that I can't remember his name as Zoran. No, it's not like Sauron. Okay. He's not out for revenge. He's trying to get back to something. Okay, and he's fanatical in that way and willing to kill destroy planets to do so. If we look at Khan out for revenge type heavies and villains, I'm not going to put Sauron under that category because we can understand Khan too. Okay, well, I see that my on-the-spot argument might be falling off a bit. But, okay, let me backtrack then. Let's look at Generations as the first attempt to recreate Star Trek II. In a subtle way. Because we have the big... Oh, Generations is such a mess. And we can love it for the mess that it is. So that's cool too. But that's the first where we have the ending where there's a big old fight. Well, you could make the case in Star Trek 3 too, where we have the fight on Genesis. But this one is your ending is the battle of the rickety bridge. All right, that's kind of your what was supposed to be the big ending that no one really gave a damn about because there's so much going on in that movie. Most people are just upset that the D crashed into the planet. That's where history's going to land on that movie. Next is where we get a bit messy. Somewhat. Let's talk about First Contact. Beautiful movie. Still one of my favorites. It's not a Star Trek II template. All right. There is a heavy with the Borg Queen. Does the Borg need a Borg Queen? That remains debatable. Okay. And Voyager tried to clean that up a bit as well. We'll leave it at the table. It did have the climactic battle scene, or not battle, but scuffle. So it's Picard like fighting with the gas coming up and all that in the engine room. But that wasn't the final scene of the movie. The movie pivots on the Zefram Cochrane stuff. What was ideally the B story, I think in retrospect, as it ages, it's going to be the A story. First Contact is about Zefram Cochrane, and the Borg does happen to be there. So I'm going to say First Contact, not a Star Trek II template movie. But in my argument, I'm also going to call First Contact the last pretty good Trek movie. Insurrection. That would make a great 2-part episode. I like a lot of Insurrection. I know it gets bagged because of some of its ridiculousness. But I've never had a big issue with it as just trying to help some people. But this is where you begin to see the kind of heavies push themselves outside of their B role. So you bring aboard Academy Award actor, winning actor as your kind of heavy, and he is out for revenge. That's the motivation, because he wants to like kill the people he left, and it becomes a parasite, right? That's what they call it, and I think that's why it doesn't get off the ground. It's part of it's a good message, and the other's like we're just kind of shoehorning in this bad stuff, and you see admirals act in ways they shouldn't, and it goes off the rails as a movie. Although the Frakes and Curtis commentary is worth listening to. Where does that leave us? Unfortunately, we're left with, from my point of view, an unwatchable Star Trek movie. There are 2 unwatchable Trek movies in my world, and Nemesis is one of them. I don't know if I could get past the dune buggy any longer. And I'm still annoyed at the hey, look at this early photo of a young Picard without any hair, because let's assume the audience is dumber than dirt. And who's the bald guy again? And and I don't appreciate the sexual assault on Troy. That was just tacky ass. Sorry, a little salty there today. We talk about Insurrection. Here's maybe where my early disappointment in understanding what makes a movie not a great movie happens. Because before the movie came out, I stumbled on the script for the movie. And I was reading it, I'm like, oh, this might be a pretty good movie. And then I saw the movie, and what took me right out of it was this other data they find, B4. And the original script that I found online, I don't know, who knows if it was original or not. The name was B9, like benign. Now, I suppose we could argue the definition of benign versus before. But, I'm just going to let that float up there. But benign maybe went... I'm getting pedantic on the names, but when I heard him called before, I just kind of sighed and went, what happened here? And comparing the two was my first early lesson into initial ideas versus the note stage, and being kind of forced to do things you maybe didn't want to in your movie. And I think history has panned that. History will judge Nemesis. Uh, Even in the context of 2002, where you saw a lot of Trek fatigue, people are down on Enterprise at the same time. I will try to watch Nemesis sometime again, but all I can promise is to try. And we'll see. But I took a non-Trek friend to that, and he's been annoyed ever since. So, sorry, you know. And here's another thing about Genesis. This also debunks that myopic even number movie rule, which deserves its own show. But no, we're gonna. Anybody like Nemesis? Think it's a great? This must be what Trek's all about movie. I'm willing to be convinced. I would like to be. And maybe I'm just so salty about it that I can't find those elements in the movie, but none of it lands. I don't know that it does. Okay, I digress. We're done with the next gen era. I feel like I've missed one, but I don't think I have. Now, this is still the con template. So what I missed in my little rant about Nemesis is you see it's all con this time. We don't even know what Shinzon's motivation is. He's just a clone of a guy. Why is he upset? We get this little backstory that he had an upbringing that you wouldn't wish on anybody, so we can kind of feel for him, just like we would feel for, you know, the Montalban Khan. But when the Enterprise is then in the equivalent of the Mutara Nebula, and then we have this big battle that is so superficial that it loses all meaning. When your big climactic battle becomes your focus, you've lost it. The movie should never be about the battles. Those should just be something to advance the narrative. But that big old space battle, forget it. They come out of whatever equivalent to a nebula they were in. Data and Picard are in like stellar cartography or something again. And then you have that Mutara Nebula battle again. Or maybe for the first time this time, because the other movies don't have the specific Mutara Nebula battle. We get a little bit in Insurrection with the warp core coming out, but it doesn't have that feel. This movie here, Nemesis, is attempting to just lift Star Trek II. And this is where we see Trek movies go off the rails. Where everything else now becomes, I'm out for revenge. End of the movie's going to be a big old battle. We're going to be done. Because what's left? Star Trek 2009, 2009, Into Darkness, and then whatever that last one was with the Fast and Furious guy, which was an okay movie. But all three have the heavy template all over it. And you don't quite grab what Trek is about in movie form here. And I don't think any of them hold up to repeated viewings. They just don't. 2009 Trek, everybody was excited about it. You could do that first, but when you, wow, this is for another time. I want to stay on the heavies. This is going to be a long one today. But yeah, I mean, you've got this Vulcan who's blaming someone for something, and then does all this destructive nonsense. Over the top nonsense, and then a big old battle. We begin with the big old battle, and we end with the big old battle, and I don't even know how the movie ends itself because it's such a hot mess. That's why it's not worth watching again. I mean, we'll talk about it as a movie, but it's who's never mind. I'm like, who's stealing lines from Star Trek, the Kelvin Star Trek movies? Okay, the second unwatchable Trek movie, in my humble opinion, is the second one, the Into Darkness, which I went on a movie theater boycott for a good 3 years after that, which kind of upset me because I missed some of the Marvel movies in the theater. But I was so, I don't know. I laughed out loud at first. I sighed and I laughed out loud, and then I stewed, and then I just said, "You're just gonna. This is just um, it, it's, this is what it is. That's what we're doing. Okay, whatever. It's hack. It was a hack movie. Um, but I just live with it, I suppose. Where did the hack go? Well, it lost me with the Indiana Jones ripoff at the beginning. There's a fine line between a homage and a ripoff, and I'm like, I just couldn't. In every movie is an homage to something else. I get it. I understand, but this outright hack. Someone, and this is the same issue with the Nemesis, right? Now, Meyer could come in and do Star Trek 2 not knowing a heck of a lot about Star Trek, and somehow it works. I don't know why Nemesis and the JJ, I don't know. And maybe it's wrong of me to get too defensive or anything. They're movies. They don't exist. They're not real. I'm not totally upset. But, as far as Trek expectations go, it's fine that it exists, but it's just got to be a write-off. And we can hope for better days. And that's what Into Darkness was. I didn't get. I think I was lost at the get-go. You want things to succeed. And then once the con shouting happened that I was anticipating like 45 minutes beforehand, I was totally gone. I almost left. Oh, and then I'm still not over this one. Sorry, this has been in a salty mood these last couple shows. I don't want to go into this too in depth, but okay. Richard Daystrom is still alive in the 23rd century. He's from the Ultimate Computer episode. I suppose, much like Howard Hughes, he could have created the Daystrom Institute. But that's really not what's going on here. They're taking next gen aesthetics and tidbits, and they're shoehorning them into your Trek movie that's supposed to be based on TOS. And that's going to take some folks out of the movie. And don't even get me started on the age of Chekhov or confusing Starfleet with the Federation during the bar scene in the 2009 movie. That's not acceptable. But I'm talking about Heavies today. I want to stay on target with the Heavies. There's more Star Trek 2. Not now for the 2009 movie. Not as totally ripped off like they tried to do in Nemesis. But, I mean, all these end fight scenes in all 4 of these movies are all interchangeable. And you can even throw in First Contact, too. Because, All right, so that's the problem with Heavies and Trek. Once in a while, it's magic. But Heavies and Trek really don't go together that well. They don't. And I know that goes against how to make your movie. Is Trek a big action movie? We can't deny that it is. Maybe I should just stop talking. This is too much. I don't think I've said anything that anybody else hasn't said. I'm trying not to get too toxic. I don't think I'm toxic about it, but I mean, if something's hack, it's hack. But, it's Trek. It's run by folks that need to make a lot of money, and we've got to give ourselves some wiggle room under the tent. So they're write-offs. But I can still kind of, gripe a small bit. We're never going to see the motion picture again, and we shouldn't, because we can go watch it whenever we want. So, okay. Unfortunately, though, we're watching the same movie again and again when we see a Trek movie. And of course, what am I talking about with the second new Trek movie, The Into Darkness, when you just use Khan and then just rip off the lines and switch things up without any establishment of these characters at all. It becomes like an interpretation or scenes from a movie just rehashed, and it's not good. Now, that last Star Trek movie, that was okay. I mean, I think I bought the Blu-ray. I've watched it a couple times. It's got some cute beats. Tried to make up for some past problems. I'm a big fan of Fast and Furious movies, but that's its own world. And, yeah, I don't think I have anything truly horrible to say about that last Trek movie. I can't remember the name of it. But, I mean, it had some good beats. Had a nice little tribute at the end for Nimoy. It's pretty touching. I'm okay with that. But it still had the heavy at the end. The guy from the Mako who became something else, and they had to fight in the wind tunnel or something. And I'm like, oh, well, look, somebody else is out for revenge. I could have done without that. Thanks for coming along for this ride. This is what Star Trek II brings to mind. Let's get the blood out of the turnip, right? Urgh. Oh, ooh, finally. A good question that requires you to go beyond the movie. Because I don't know. I know she was supposed to be a half Romulan. And I just did an overview a few episodes back with that Pandora Principle novel that discussed the planet. Was it called Hell something? Can't wait to turn it over. And I got to remember to turn it over this time. My last show, I was so salty about "And the Children Shall Lead." I didn't even bother to turn the question over. It has hell in it. It's not the hell mouth, but there's something in it. So good. Finally, an okay Star Trek II question that isn't so obvious. I mean, I'm waiting for Tale of Two Cities to show up, or maybe a Moby Dick reference next, but, okay. Oh, now we're getting someplace. This makes me happy. What type of sensor did the Reliant use to screen out the possible life forms? I do not know. I'm so happy that I don't know this off the top. Sensor did Reliant use to life forms in order to test the genesis? Nothing's even coming to mind, and I've taken up so much time to rant. Hell, I can do a long episode. I've been in the 12-minute range now. I can do a whole half hour on this card. Don't know. I think the rant took me out of the trivia, but there we go. Well, luckily, hey, the next Star Trek II card I won't have that rant. Paul Winfield. Dathan on Eladrel. Was Captain Terrell. Rhymes with the Drell. Ah, I wonder if that was intentional. Anyway, Paul Winfield played Captain Terrell of the late USS Reliant. Didn't quite meet the best end, but it was a worthwhile ending because he had the thing in the ear, and it was getting to him, and he manages to sacrifice himself. So there we go. The mistake of Captain Terrell, I suppose, is beaming down with his first officer and making that your landing party. Not the best idea to put your two senior officers and just plop them down on the planet to get kidnapped and all. That's why you have landing parties. Lesson learned, I suppose. But the good news is that the rest of the crew were rescued. So there. All right, let's do a flip. I want to know what those sensors are all about. Yes, Kirstie Alley. Did I even say her name? This is Regular One, Romulan Ale. Oh, that's all. I don't think that's correct. Oh, so this is the Savick question that I overthought. Here I was all excited about the specifics, but no, she's just a Vulcan. Born on Vulcan. Thanks, card. You kind of let me down on that one. I memory baited this one. Yeah. All right. The Dino Scanner. I can see Chekhov saying this now. We run on that Dino Scanner. Yes, okay. Awesome. Thanks, Dino Scanner. Maybe this should be titled Dino Scanner and Captain Terrell. All right, so I'm only missing this question, but I've lost a little bit of myself and just kind of doing a salty bounce on Heavies and Trek movies. So this might be more of a deep dive than a trivia card, or I'll just put them in both playlists for the 12 people that want to give it a view. More than enough have I done for you today. So go and have one. And thank you for your time.